Hello, everyone. I hope you're all doing well. Welcome to Sunday Night. I'm MJ, and if you're someone who enjoys stories that leave you staring into the darkness long after they end, then you're in the right place. Before we begin, I just want to say thank you. Your support, your comments, and the love you show this channel mean more to me than you can imagine. Every message I read reminds me that there are people on the other side of the screen waiting for the next story. That's what keeps me coming back every few days and sometimes every single day to bring you another terrifying tale. Here on Sunday Night, you'll find some of the most chilling, mysterious, and unforgettable horror stories from around the world. Stories that aren't just meant to scare you for a few minutes, but to stay with you long after the video ends. If you're new here, don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss a new nightmare. And now, I have just one request. Don't just listen to the story. Experience it. Imagine every sound. Picture every scene. And stay with me until the very end. Because sometimes, the scariest part of a story isn't how it begins, it's how it ends. So, dim the lights, put on your headphones, take a deep breath, and let's begin tonight's horror story. The tenant in flat 402, the house that had death written on its door. My name is Daniel Walker, and if you're listening to this story, I want you to remember one thing for the rest of your life. There are some doors in this world that should never be opened. This happened in 2016. At that time, I was a travel filmmaker. My passion was exploring mysterious places where ordinary people were too afraid to go. That passion eventually brought me to a remote mountain valley somewhere in the United States. The place was unbelievably beautiful. Towering mountains, dense forests, crystal clear rivers. It looked like a piece of heaven on earth, but I had no idea that the darkest secret of my life was waiting for me in that peaceful valley. I was staying at the house of an elderly couple. They were kind, welcoming, and treated me like family. For the first 2 days, I spent my time filming. Waterfalls, mountains, forests, and the breathtaking scenery. Everything felt peaceful. Everything felt normal. But on the third evening, everything changed. I was walking through the village with my camera when something suddenly caught my attention. There was an old abandoned house just 2 houses away from where I was staying. Every window was boarded shut. The roof was partially collapsed. The walls looked dark and weathered. But what truly stopped me were the words painted across the front door in bright red letters, "Do not enter." I couldn't take my eyes off those words. I stood there for several minutes. Then suddenly, an old woman spoke from behind me. "Son, don't even look at that house." I turned around. "Why?" She looked directly into my eyes and quietly replied, "Some questions are better left unanswered." Without saying another word, she walked away. That night, during dinner, I asked the elderly couple about the house. The room instantly fell silent. The old man slowly placed his glass of water on the table. His hands were trembling. He looked at me and said, "Daniel, if you want to enjoy your vacation, forget that house even exists." I smiled and asked, "What's inside it?" He remained silent for a few moments. Then he whispered, "All we know is that anyone who tried to uncover the truth about that house never came back the same." That night, I couldn't sleep. Those 3 words kept repeating inside my head, "Do not enter," around 1:45 a.m. Curiosity defeated fear. I grabbed my camera, picked up my flashlight, quietly slipped out of the house, and made my way toward the abandoned building. The cold mountain wind hit my face. The entire village was asleep. Within a few minutes, I was standing in front of the house. The front door was slightly open. I slowly pushed it. Krieg. The door slowly opened by itself. I switched on my flashlight. Dust covered every corner. Broken furniture was scattered across the floor. The air smelled old and strangely cold. I took one step inside, then another, Bang! The front door slammed shut behind me. I spun around, grabbed the handle, pulled with all my strength, kicked the door, tried everything, but it wouldn't move. For nearly 3 hours, I desperately searched for a way out. Nothing worked. Completely exhausted. I sat down on the dusty floor. Then I heard it. Thump, thump, thump. Slow footsteps coming from the second floor. My heart started pounding, so hard that I could hear it in my ears. I picked up my flashlight and slowly climbed the staircase. At the end of the hallway, there was a half-open door. I pushed it open. Inside the room, there was nothing except an old wooden table, and sitting on that table, covered in years of dust, was a thick leather-bound diary. I slowly picked it up, opened the first page. Only one sentence was written there. If you are reading this diary, it's already too late for you to leave. My hands began to shake. I slowly turned to the next page and read the very first line. My name is Ethan Carter, and I wasn't born a monster. Ethan Carter's diary. I took a deep breath and turned the second page of the diary. The ink on the paper was incredibly old, yet the words looked as if they had just been written. My name is Ethan Carter. If you're reading this diary, listen to my entire story first, then decide whether I was a criminal or simply a man who was slowly consumed by darkness. I was only 7 years old when one snowy night changed my life forever. My parents died in a tragic accident. The only things I remember are a white hospital room and a police officer who gently placed his hand on my head and said, "Your sister will take care of you now." That was the last truly happy day of my life. My older sister, Emily, was only 23 years old. She gave up her education. She buried all of her dreams, only because she didn't want me to grow up alone. Every morning, she worked in a factory. Every night, she worked as a waitress at a small diner. Whenever she came home, she was so exhausted that she could barely stay awake. But every single time I looked at her, she smiled and said, "Don't worry, Ethan. One day, everything will be okay." What I didn't know back then was that some things never become okay. As I grew older, something inside me started to change. A strange silence began taking over my mind. I would stand in front of the mirror for hours talking to myself. Many times I felt as if someone was standing behind me. Whenever I turned around, there was nobody there. I told Emily about what I was experiencing. She took me to see a doctor. The doctor said, "It's only trauma. With time, it will disappear." But it never disappeared. Instead, it became stronger. With every passing day, one night, I had a terrifying dream. I was standing in an abandoned cemetery. Thick fog surrounded everything. Somewhere in the distance, someone was watching me. I never saw the face. I only heard a whisper. "Power is what every human being is searching for." I woke up screaming. My entire body was covered in sweat. After that night, my dreams were never the same. Then, one day, I discovered a hidden forum on the internet. People there believed in strange rituals and forbidden ideas. Someone claimed that certain forbidden rituals could grant extraordinary power. At first, I thought it was complete nonsense, but for some reason, I kept returning to those same pages. A dangerous idea slowly began taking root inside my mind, an idea that slowly stole my sanity. At that point, the handwriting inside the diary changed. The ink was smeared as if the writer's hands had been shaking. Only one sentence was written there. That was the day my first sin began. Without thinking, I reached for the next page, but at that exact moment, outside the room, I heard it. Thump, thump, thump. Footsteps, this time. They were much closer. It sounded as if someone had stopped right outside the door. I held my breath. Everything went completely silent. Then, from the other side of the door, a very soft voice whispered, "Daniel, close the diary." I froze like a statue because I had never told anyone in that house my name. The neighbor saw everything. That night, for a few moments, I closed the diary. My hands were shaking uncontrollably. A strange silence filled the room. It felt as if the entire house was listening to every breath I took. After a long while, I gathered enough courage to open the diary again. On the next page, Ethan had written, "I know, by now, you're looking at me with nothing but hatred. But the truth is, when a person's mind completely breaks, they can no longer tell the difference between right and wrong. Every night that I left the house, Emily believed I was simply going for a long walk. But the truth was far more terrifying. At first, nobody suspected me. But then, strange rumors started spreading. Throughout the neighborhood, people claimed that every night, around 3 o'clock, footsteps could be heard near the cemetery. Some people said they had seen a dark figure standing in the distance. Others claimed they watched the cemetery gate slowly closing, all by itself. Nobody had proof. There was only fear. Across the street from our house lived a man named Mark Hudson. He was a retired police officer. Mark began finding my behavior very suspicious. Almost every night, he would stand by his window, watching the street. Then one night, he saw me, quietly leaving the house just after midnight. Without wasting a second, he put on his jacket and began following me. From a safe distance, I walked straight toward the forest. The wind was blowing violently. Tree branches were crashing against each other. The moon had disappeared behind thick clouds. Mark followed me without making a sound, but he had no idea that before the night was over, he was about to witness the most terrifying truth of his entire life. The next lines inside the diary were blurry, as if the pen had stopped again and again while writing. That night, my life changed forever. I had no idea someone was following me. At that exact moment, I stopped reading because the window that had been completely shut only a few moments earlier slowly began opening by itself. Creak, a freezing gust of wind entered the room. The pages of the diary, lying on the table, started turning on their own. Flip, flip, flip. I tried to stop them, but they kept turning until they reached the very last pages. Then a new sentence appeared, one that definitely hadn't been there before. Mark told the police everything he saw, and now you are very close to discovering the truth. At that exact moment, from the hallway downstairs, I heard someone slowly climbing the staircase. Thump, thump, thump. This time, the footsteps stopped right outside my bedroom door. Then, from the other side, a quiet whisper broke the silence. "Daniel, finish reading the diary, or you will never leave this house." The truth. Everyone tried to hide the footsteps. Outside the door, suddenly stopped. An overwhelming silence filled the entire house. It became so quiet that even the sound of my own breathing started terrifying me. I gathered my courage and slowly opened the door. The hallway was completely empty. There was no one there, but fresh footprints were visible in the thick layer of dust, and those footprints weren't leading away from my room. They were leading toward it, as if someone had walked to my door only moments ago and then disappeared. A cold shiver ran through my entire body. I walked back to the old table and opened the next page of the diary. What Mark witnessed changed him forever. He couldn't sleep for the entire night. As soon as morning came, he called the local police station. At first, nobody believed him. People assumed he was simply an old man whose imagination had gotten the better of him. But Mark kept repeating the same sentence over and over again. If you don't search that house today, it will already be too late. Finally, 2 police officers, a detective, and the local sheriff arrived at my house. I calmly opened the front door and stood in front of them. They asked the usual questions. I answered every single one with a smile. They couldn't see any fear in my behavior. But Mark kept saying the same thing. Search the back room. The police began searching the entire house, one room, then another, then another. Every corner was silent. Emily sat quietly in one corner, crying over and over. She begged them, "Please, don't open the upstairs room." The sheriff immediately stopped. He looked at her and quietly asked, "Why?" Emily didn't answer. She simply lowered her head. The sheriff turned toward one of his deputies. "Break the lock." The door slowly opened, and inside was something that left everyone in the room completely speechless. The diary only said, "That was the moment my life finally ended." The secret I had hidden for so many years had finally been exposed. The moment I finished reading those words, a loud noise echoed downstairs. Bang! It sounded as if the front door had just opened by itself. I grabbed my flashlight and looked toward the staircase. Below me, there was nothing except darkness. Then I heard a voice, very soft but perfectly clear. "Daniel, you are finally ready to read the last page." The diary almost slipped out of my hands because when I looked at the cover one last time, the name Ethan Carter was gone. Instead, another name had appeared, my own name, Daniel Walker, and beneath it, written in dark red ink, there was only one sentence. "Now, this story belongs to you, the secret that could never be buried." My hands were shaking violently. I slowly turned the final page of the diary. Written across it were these words: "If you've made it this far, then you deserve to know the truth. My name was Ethan Carter. I was once an ordinary child, but when my parents died, something inside me broke forever. My sister, Emily, sacrificed her entire life for me, but even she couldn't stop the darkness that had begun growing inside my mind. I became trapped inside a dangerous delusion. I truly believed that forbidden acts could give a person extraordinary power. That false belief led me down a path of terrible crimes that could never be justified. Every single night I left the house, and every time I came back, I convinced myself that I was right. But the truth was, with every passing night, I was losing the last pieces of my humanity. Emily
tried to stop me. She cried. She begged. She screamed. But I refused to listen. On the next page, there was only one sentence. Then one night, Mark saw me. The following morning, Mark rushed to the police station. He was trembling with fear. At first, nobody believed him, but after, the police conducted a complete search of the house. They discovered evidence that shocked the entire town. Ethan Carter was arrested. Emily was also taken into custody for questioning for days. Every newspaper carried the story as its headline. The entire state could not stop talking about it. I slowly turned the last page. It was completely blank. For a moment, I thought the story was finally over. Then drops of dark red ink began appearing across the empty page right before my eyes. Words started writing by themselves. Daniel, you finished reading my story. Now turn around and look behind you. My heart stopped. Very slowly, I turned around. The room was empty. I let out a deep breath of relief. Then I looked back at the diary. A new sentence had appeared. Now, look at the window. I slowly raised my flashlight and pointed it toward the window. On the other side, hidden within the darkness, someone was standing there. I couldn't clearly see the face, but there was no doubt that the figure was staring directly at me. And then it smiled. At that exact moment, every light inside the house turned on at once. The front door slowly opened by itself. I didn't wait for another second. I ran as fast as I could and escaped that house. I never returned to that village again. But even today, every year, on the night of October 16th, an old envelope appears outside my front door. Inside, there is only a single blank page, and written in dark red ink, there is only one sentence. The story isn't over. You're still